Now, for most of us here, we've probably heard this gospel before, but even if it is just for the first time, I'm sure a few of the words just stand out. Who do you say that I am? This question still echoes for us today, and it's a profound and personal question. Now, some say Jesus was a good man, while others a wise teacher or a good moral example. And we hear these ideas in the world today around us. And if we're honest, we believe these too. And yes, it's not that those aren't true, but it's something much more deep. Peter didn't hesitate at all. He clearly said to Jesus, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And I pray that we too say that we know that Jesus is the Son of the living God, and not just in the past tense, like in those examples I said earlier, but a living truth. Jesus, you were, you are, and you will always be the Son of the living God. That confession is at the very heart of our faith. And when we can move that from our heads to our hearts, it can make a huge difference. But during my reflection this week, those weren't the words that stood out to me. The ones that did were, I will give you the keys. I will give you the keys. Well, that statement brought to mind something quite ordinary, something I've experienced from both sides as a receiver and a giver. Now, for those of you who drive, do you remember the first time you were handed the keys to the family car? I do, and sure, part of me was, yeah, finally, I get to drive. But it was more than about the freedom of driving. It was about trust. I had been given something valuable, something I didn't earn, and definitely couldn't afford to replace. My parents were entrusting me with the responsibility. Now they gave me rules, not to control me, but to protect me for my safety, and more than likely for the safety of those unsuspecting drivers who were going to share the road with me. They offered support, they gave me guidance, they gave me their trust. And those keys represented more than driving. They represented a responsibility, a privilege, and the belief that I would do my best, even though I was still learning. And those keys came with my parents' trust and their support if I needed it. That image of trust can help us understand the relationship between Jesus and Peter. Now, in biblical times, keys were a symbol of authority. The one who held the keys to an estate, to the household, or to the kingdom acted on the behalf of the master, not to do as they pleased, but to carry out the master's will. Jesus gave Peter the keys, not to a car, not even to a building, but to the kingdom of heaven on earth, the church, the new community of believers. Peter was being trusted to bind and loose and to lead the early church, but not by his own strength. Jesus knew Peter would need help, and he promised him that even the gates of hell would not prevail. That promise came with a gift, the Holy Spirit. And as we saw dramatically at Pentecost, when Peter and the apostles were transformed from fearful men into bold proclaimers of the gospel. And in today's first reading, we see that same divine help. Peter was thrown into prison, and he's freed not by any strategy or strength of his own, but by God's own intervention. God walks with him and helps him carry the burden of those keys. Today, keys might not have the same symbolic weight as they did back then. We talk about passcodes, PIN numbers, key cards, fobs, but the meaning is the same. Even last night when I drove here, I didn't really have a key to the car. I had this fob and just had to push a button and everything worked. But again, it's someone who gives you access to something valuable and personal, and they're saying, I trust you with something important. Jesus, gave Peter the keys, and Christ gives each of us keys, a share in his mission, his church, and his plan. And just like Peter, he gives that trust with the promise of support. He knew Peter's heart. Peter had a special relationship with them, and because of that relationship, he knew Peter would be trustworthy. But not by Peter's own power, but by the grace that flows from an abiding relationship with Christ. We see that same dynamic in Paul's life. In today's second reading, Paul, nearing the end of his ministry, writes, I fought the good fight and finished the race. But he did not do that alone. He also wrote, the Lord stood by me and gave me strength. Like Peter and Paul lived out the mission they were given, not perfectly, but without trial, and not without trial, but faithfully, and they did so because of a deep, living relationship with Christ. Well, what about us? So we can ask the question, what keys has God entrusted to us? Are they the keys of a spouse, being a parent, running a family, being a child or a friend? Are they the keys of a vocation, marriage, priesthood, the diaconate, religious life, or single life? Or are they the keys to bring his love to your workplace, your school, your classroom, your friends, your ministry, or the keys to be a Christian witness to the world? Now, a couple of questions around that. How does knowing who Christ is help us with those responsibilities? And how can we deepen our relationship with Christ so we can live them out more fully, more faithfully, and more joyfully? Now, that can be overwhelming a bit. We might be a little bit scared of those keys he's given us. They could be keys to our cross. But if Christ gave us those keys, he trusts us. And he promises to walk with each of us, offering grace through prayers and the sacraments that he's given his church. The sacrament of forgiveness, the sacrament of marriage, to give us grace to live with that other person, the sacrament of the Eucharist that we'll be sharing shortly. He gives us his very presence. He is truly with us. He gives us the strength and support we need to live out our unique calling in a Christ-like way. And he does this not only because he only trusts us, but even more because he loves us unconditionally. And he knows that when you follow his plan for your life, it will lead to true peace and lasting joy. And because of that love, he would not make that plan any other way.